9.
Welcome to this deep dive. We are jumping into something incredibly intense today, looking at a scenario that really challenges how you might view the world around you.
Yeah, I am really looking forward to digging into the sources today. We've got a lot of ground to cover.
We really do, because, humanity has this underlying assumption that we can always outbuild or out-tech or just outmanage whatever nature throws at us.
Right, like we can engineer our way out of anything.
Exactly. When the asteroid hits, we build a bunker. When the floodwaters rise, we engineer these massive seawalls. We rely entirely on our synthetic world, our concrete, our digital supply chains, all of it, to insulate us from the wild.
But our sources today ask a really brutal question. What if the bunker is built out of the very materials that are suddenly raining down on fire from the sky?
Yeah. What happens when the foundational biological layer of the Earth, the actual soil, the grass, the trees, is instantly weaponized against the engineered systems that you and I rely on every single day?
You end up with a scenario where there is just no technological pivot. I mean, when the biological base layer fails overnight, the synthetic layer built on top of it doesn't just struggle. It undergoes this catastrophic terminal collapse.
And that is exactly the thought experiment we are diving into today. Our mission is to analyze the severe eco-socio-economic chain reactions triggered by the first trumpet in the book of Revelation.
Yeah, specifically looking at a textual analysis describing celestial fire and Earth's scorching.
Right. We're looking at this strictly as an eco-socio-economic model.
Because it's a fascinating model. We're looking at what actually happens to a highly centralized global infrastructure when fire and ice literally fall from the sky and wipe out a third of the Earth's vegetation in an afternoon.
It's wild to even think about. But to even begin parsing the mechanics of that collapse, we have to look at the baseline state of the world just before this event happens.
Right. According to the source text, the first trumpet doesn't just interrupt some golden age of peace. Not at all.
No, the Earth has already endured, 3.5 years of relentless global tribulation by this point?
Exactly. We're talking widespread famine, massive geopolitical wars, plagues, and even a bombardment of meteor showers.
So the population, you're already stretched to your absolute breaking point. And politically, the sources point out that humanity is living under the brutal, centralized dictatorship of the Antichrist.
Which means the global supply chain, such as it is likely functioning entirely on fear, tight rationing, and extreme centralization.
Yeah, it's like a heavily leveraged financial market where just one single margin call could collapse the whole portfolio.
That's a great way to put it. And then the text introduces this highly unusual preamble. Before the trumpet judgments even begin, Revelation 8.1 describes a profound pause.
The half hour of silence.
Yes. Heaven itself is stunned into a half hour of silence. Amidst all the cosmic and earthly chaos of the preceding 3.5 years, everything just stops.
I always struggle with how to contextualize that silence, though, because it's not a moment of relief, is it?
Not at all. It's incredibly tense.
Right. It feels much more like that unnatural drop in barometric pressure right before a Category 5 hurricane makes landfall, or when the ocean suddenly retreats before a massive tsunami.
Oh, wow. Yeah, the vacuum effect.
Exactly. The birds stop singing, the wind dies down, and if you don't know the mechanics of the weather, you might step outside and think, oh, the danger is past. But it's actually just a vacuum waiting to be violently filled.
That tension is exactly what the text conveys, because what breaks that silence is a catalyst of immense proportion. The text says an angel flings a fire-filled altar censer down to the earth.
Just throws it down.
Yeah, and that triggers a massive global earthquake. This seismic event is basically the starting gun. It signals the 7 angels to prepare their trumpets.
Okay, hold on. I want to challenge the physical mechanics of that trigger for a second. Because a single localized earthquake, even a really catastrophic one, doesn't just spontaneously ignite global chaos.
Fair point.
Like tectonic plates don't work like a single sheet of glass where tapping one corner shatters the whole thing. How does the text analysis justify this leading directly into global atmospheric fire?
Well, from a standard geological standpoint, you're absolutely correct. A typical fault line slip wouldn't do it. But the proposed physical explanation in our source text suggests a seismic event so profound that it entirely bypasses standard plate tectonics.
Okay, so what are we talking about here?
We are looking at a disturbance that fractures the lithosphere or triggers a massive wave in the mantle itself. if you introduce a shock wave powerful enough to destabilize the asthenosphere.
The semi-fluid layer beneath the plates.
Right, you aren't just shifting continents at that point. You are violently venting the core's pressure globally, triggering these synchronized volcanic eruptions all across the Ring of Fire and well beyond.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because that synchronized volcanic venting is what leads directly to the first trumpet sounding. The text says, "There came hail and fire mixed with blood, and they were thrown to the earth."
It's a very vivid description.
It is, but my immediate reaction reading that was to flag it as a paradox. Fire and hail. You have extreme heat and extreme cold falling through the exact same airspace at the exact same time. How does that physically manifest without one just canceling the other out?
It sounds totally impossible until you map out the thermodynamics of a synchronized global volcanic event.
Walk me through it.
Okay, so when you have thousands of volcanic fissures opening up simultaneously, they expel massive quantities of superheated water vapor right alongside flaming iron-rich lava miles into the atmosphere.
Right.
That superheated vapor rockets straight up into the freezing upper troposphere and the stratosphere.
So the extreme heat at the surface is basically manufacturing a violent artificial winter in the upper atmosphere.
Exactly. The updrafts would be biblical in scale. The vapor condenses and freezes almost instantly in that turbulent upper atmosphere, forming just colossal hail.
Wow.
Simultaneously, the heavier volcanic ash, the pumice, and the flaming debris, the fire, reach their apex and begin falling back to Earth. So you have massive chunks of ice being violently pushed down by the exact same atmospheric currents that are raining down burning rock.
That's just incomprehensible.
Yeah.
And the blood mentioned in the text. Where does that fit into this thermodynamic model?
The source analysis points to a couple of physical explanations there. It could be descriptive language for the horrifying blood-red tint of the sky caused by all that iron oxide-rich ash filtering the sunlight.
Which makes sense.
Or, more grimly, when massive updrafts pull from the oceans or lakes near these seismic vents, they draw massive amounts of microscopic biological material.
Like red algae.
Red algae, or literally the blood of marine life pulverized in the eruptions. All of that gets mixed with the vapor and falls back down.
An absolute atmospheric nightmare. Just stepping outside your front door to assess the damage requires industrial-grade armor. Mobility is instantly reduced to zero for like 99% of the population.
Which means any centralized effort by the Antichrist government to distribute rations or maintain order or repair infrastructure, it's physically grounded.
You can't fly supply planes through an atmosphere choked with pumice and colossal hail.
No, and you can't drive trucks through a rain of flaming debris either. The localized reality shown in that image scales up to a complete paralysis of global logistics.
And while humanity is paralyzed in their bunkers or their homes, the text specifies exactly what this barrage is targeting. And the target isn't humanity directly, and it isn't even the cities.
Right, it's the Earth's biological foundation. The text says a third of the Earth is burned up, a third of the trees, and all the green grass.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. The text is incredibly precise. It doesn't just say, all grass everywhere is vaporized forever. It specifically notes that all the green grass is burned up.
Yeah, that adjective is crucial.
The analysis points out that this refers to grass that is seasonally green at that specific time and location, not every single dormant blade of grass across the entire globe.
What's fascinating here is what that distinction reveals about the timeline of these events.
Because further on in the source text, it notes that by the time the fifth trumpet sounds, grass exists again. The locusts in that later judgment are specifically told not to harm the grass of the earth. So if the grass is burned in the first trumpet and is back by the fifth,
You start to realize the sheer velocity of the timeline that implies. I mean, grass takes time to germinate and push green shoots through soil, especially soil that has just been scorched by volcanic fallout. If there is only enough time for a single season of partial regrowth between the first and fifth trumpet, we are looking at a bombardment of global judgments happening within weeks or at most a few months of each other.
I was trying to map that out in my head. Like, imagine you're a citizen surviving under this dictatorship. You've just endured the fire and hail. You finally step outside once the sky clears a bit.
In your hazmat suit, basically.
Yeah, exactly. You spend weeks digging through the ash, rationing your last cans of food, and then you finally see a tiny green shoot of grass push through the gray sludge. You think, okay, the earth is healing. We can start planting again.
And then the next trumpet hits.
Yes, the moment that psychological hope registers, it just hits. It is a calculated, relentless dismantling of hope.
It entirely preempts any attempt at recovery. But, even setting the grass aside, the destruction of one-third of the Earth's trees is an instantaneous, permanent blow. Grass might return in a season. A mature forest ecosystem takes decades, if not centuries, to establish.
Let's trace that domino effect. If we lose a third of the trees and a third of the Earth's surface vegetation in a matter of hours, what happens to that highly centralized, fear-based economy we established at the beginning?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that economy just evaporates. First, you have instantaneous, massive crop destruction. Global agricultural zones, the breadbaskets of the world, are wiped out by fire and blunt force hail trauma.
And the centralized dictatorship relies on controlling the food supply to control the population.
Exactly. When a third of that supply burns, the currency of power vanishes overnight.
And it triggers a secondary biological collapse, too.
Yeah.
With the surface vegetation gone, the global food chain fundamentally breaks. Herbivores starve almost immediately.
Yeah.
The agricultural livestock that somehow survived the initial firestorm now have zero grazing material.
Which means the carnivores starve shortly after. You're plunging the human population into a structural famine.
Explain the difference there.
Well, this isn't a logistical famine where the food exists but just can't be delivered because of bad roads or war. The calories literally no longer exist on the planet.
Wow. And our sources dig into another highly specific consequence of losing a third of the trees, the massive loss of timber and thatch. And I think if you are listening to this in a highly industrialized Western city, your mind probably goes straight to commodity markets.
Right, you think about lumber prices skyrocketing.
Yeah, the housing market crashes, new construction halts. But I want you to step outside that modernized lens for a second. What does the sudden loss of timber and thatch mean for the majority of the global population?
It means the immediate loss of basic thermal regulation and sanitation. For billions of people in the developing world, and likely for most of the population surviving off the grid during this tribulation, timber isn't just building material. It is their sole source of fuel.
Overnight, a third of the world loses the ability to generate a fire.
Which triggers a terrifying cascade of secondary fatalities. Think about it. If you can't build a fire, you can't cook whatever scavenged raw calories you manage to find. But more critically,
You can't boil water.
exactly, you cannot boil water. The evaporation of wood as an accessible resource means an immediate exponential spike in fatal waterborne diseases like cholera and dysentery.
Especially considering the atmospheric aftermath we talked about earlier. We had this massive injection of volcanic ash into the stratosphere.
Right, the albedo effect.
Explain the mechanics of that, because it makes the loss of timber even more brutal.
Okay, so when you inject millions of tons of sulfur dioxide and iron-rich ash into the upper atmosphere, it creates a highly reflective shield. It literally bounces incoming solar radiation back out into space before it can warm the Earth.
So paradoxically, while a third of the Earth's surface is literally on fire, the global ambient temperature plummets.
Yes, you are thrust into a sudden, aggressive volcanic winter.
You're freezing in the dark, the sky is choking you, and the forest you would normally harvest for firewood is already reduced to unusable ash. It's a total systemic trap.
It really is.
And speaking of traps, the source analysis points to a mechanism regarding fresh water that I found completely terrifying. We know the food and fuel are gone, but losing the trees also fundamentally destroys the world's fresh water supply through watershed collapse. How does burning a tree miles away poison a reservoir?
It all comes down to the mechanics of the soil itself. Forests act as the Earth's primary water filtration and retention network. Deep root systems hold the topography together.
Right, they act like a sponge.
Exactly. But when a forest burns at the intense, unnatural temperatures described in this event, something insidious happens to the ground. The organic compounds in the leaf litter and the topsoil don't just burn, they vaporize.
They turn into a gas.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that hot gas gets pushed down into the cooler layers of dirt below, where it condenses. It forms this thick, waxy, water-repellent layer beneath the surface. The soil literally becomes hydrophobic.
So it physically rejects water.
It acts like a sheet of plastic. So when the atmospheric chaos we described earlier dumps massive amounts of rain or melting hail onto these burn zones, the Earth cannot absorb a single drop. You don't get groundwater recharge.
Instead, you get instantaneous, catastrophic flash floods.
And those floods are sweeping up all the volcanic ash, the pumice, the dead animal carcasses, and the burned infrastructure.
Oh, man. And channeling millions of tons of toxic, highly acidic mud directly into the rivers, lakes, and freshwater reservoirs.
Exactly. The very watersheds that millions rely on for drinking water are completely suffocated by toxic runoff. The biological filtration system was burned away, and the mechanical result is the poisoning of the water supply.
So what does this all mean when we aggregate it down to the individual human experience? Put yourself in the shoes of someone on the ground during this first trumpet. You are already exhausted, living under an oppressive government that demands total loyalty just to buy or sell.
You're already at the end of your rope.
Suddenly, the sky turns blood red. The atmospheric pressure drops, that massive earthquake hits, and fire and ice begin pulverizing everything in sight. If you survive the initial bombardment, maybe hiding in a basement while huge rocks smash the city above you, you eventually emerge into a freezing volcanic winter.
And you find that the complex web of survival you relied on has been completely severed.
Your food network is gone because the crops burned and the livestock are dead. Your sanitation network is gone because you have no timber to boil water. And even if you could boil it, the water network is gone because the hydrophobic soil has flushed toxic ash into every local reservoir. Every single vector of human survival is compromised simultaneously. You are entirely exposed.
This raises an important question, though. When we critically evaluate the text's specific phrasing, why is the destruction so strictly metered? The text repeatedly emphasizes the fraction, a third of the earth, a third of the trees. If the catalyst was a massive, untethered geological event, why does it stop at a third?
That is a great point. It implies a highly controlled, intentional limit. It's not a runaway natural disaster, it's a calibrated judgment.
Right. Thematically, in the broader context of apocalyptic literature, a third represents partial, severe destruction. It signifies that this event, despite completely collapsing the eco-socioeconomic structure of the world, is not the final curtain call. It is a profound, aggressive warning.
Because it deliberately leaves two-thirds of the vegetation intact.
Exactly.
Meaning humanity survives the event, but they survive in a fractured, impoverished, and deeply traumatized state.
It forces the survivors to look at the fragility of their existence. It's a wake-up call signaling that whatever engineered solutions the Antichrist's government promises, they are entirely useless when the earth itself rebels. And it signals that the worst is still to come.
A wake-up call that literally shakes the earth and burns the sky. To bring all of this together, what we are looking at with the first trumpet is far more than just a spectacular cosmic light show. It is a calculated structural dismantling of the Earth's biological life support systems.
That's a great summary.
We've traced how a massive tectonic disruption forces synchronized volcanic venting, which weaponizes the atmosphere. The superheated vapor creates colossal hail, while the albedo effect plunges the burning world into a deep freeze.
And we've mapped how the precise targeting of one-third of the trees and seasonal grass sets off that terminal socioeconomic chain reaction.
Right, the instantaneous loss of crops and herbivores breaks the global food chain. The loss of timber removes the ability to sanitize water or regulate heat.
And the creation of hydrophobic soil ensures that whatever fresh water remains is quickly suffocated by toxic, acidic runoff.
It is the complete unwinding of the systems that sustain human life. It effectively neutralizes the power, the logistics, and the infrastructure of a global dictatorship in a single afternoon, proving that human authority is entirely contingent on the Earth's willingness to host us. And for you, listening right now, stepping out of the text and looking at our own reality, this thought experiment brings something very sharp into focus.
It strips away the illusion of our independence from nature.
We spend our lives surrounded by concrete, steel, and fiber optic cables. We assume that our sophisticated supply chains and our technological advancements have elevated us above the dirt.
But this scenario illustrates how deeply our massive infrastructure, our food networks, and our water security rely entirely on something as simple and apparently as vulnerable as a blade of grass and the root system of a tree.
Exactly. If the biological base layer fails, the synthetic world built on top of it collapses instantly. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over on your own. If losing just a third of our vegetation causes this absolute level of systemic, economic, and societal collapse, what happens to human psychology and whatever's left of global order when the second trumpet sounds?
A truly chilling question to consider.
It really is. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the literal and infrastructural devastation of the first trumpet. We always love taking these complex texts and breaking down the mechanics of how they actually function. Stay curious, stay informed, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.
9.